For over 3,000 years, one of the greatest disasters in human history was believed to be nothing more than legend. A story too catastrophic to be real, too precise to be myth. Then the Earth gave up its secrets. Buried beneath layers of volcanic ash, hidden beneath the waves of the Aegean Sea, and locked inside ancient tree rings stretching across 3 continents, scientists began finding the same signature, the same moment in time. It pointed to a single, world-altering event that did not just destroy one civilization. It may have silently ended an entire era of the ancient world. We're talking about the eruption of Thera. Around 1600 BCE, a volcano on the island, now known as Santorini, in the southern Aegean Sea, did not simply erupt. It detonated. Geologists have since estimated that the Thera eruption was among the most powerful volcanic events in the last 10,000 years, releasing energy several times greater than the 1883 eruption of Krakatoa, which itself was heard nearly 5,000 kilometers away. But here is what makes Thera different from every other ancient disaster. For decades, historians and archaeologists debated whether this eruption was truly as catastrophic as the geological evidence suggested. Some placed the date of the eruption around 1500 BCE, aligning it with Egyptian historical records and Minoan archaeological layers on the island of Crete. Others insisted the physical evidence, ice cores from Greenland and Antarctica and fossilized tree rings from as far away as Ireland and California, pointed to something closer to 1628 BCE, a difference of over a century, and that gap changed everything. Because if the earlier date was correct, then the Thera eruption did not just destroy the flourishing Bronze Age settlement buried beneath the island. The remarkably preserved city, now known as Akrotiri, excavated beginning in 1967 by Greek archaeologist Spiridon Marinatos. It would have struck at the very height of Minoan civilization. It was one of the most sophisticated, peaceful, and artistically extraordinary cultures the ancient Mediterranean world had ever produced. And then, within a generation, the Minoans were gone. The palaces at Knossos, Phaistos, and Zakros, massive, multi-story administrative centers, unlike anything else in Bronze Age Europe, showed signs of simultaneous destruction. The frescoes fell silent. The trade networks collapsed. A civilization that had thrived for centuries simply stopped. For a long time, nobody could explain why. Now they think they finally can. When archaeologist Spiridon Marinatos first began excavating Akrotiri in 1967, what he uncovered beneath the volcanic ash of Santorini was extraordinary. Entire streets, multi-story buildings still standing, sophisticated drainage systems, furniture, pottery, wall paintings of extraordinary beauty and detail, preserved so perfectly that researchers could study the clothing, the hairstyles, even the daily routines of people who had lived there nearly 4,000 years ago. But there was something deeply unsettling about the site. No bodies, almost no valuables, no gold, no jewelry, no stored wealth of any kind. The people of Akrotiri had known what was coming. They had evacuated. Somehow, the inhabitants of this thriving Bronze Age city had read the warning signs, likely weeks or months of escalating earthquakes and minor eruptions, and they had escaped before the island tore itself apart. The question that haunted researchers for decades was simple. Where did they go? And more importantly, did the disaster follow them anyway? This is where modern science changed the conversation entirely. Beginning in the late 20th century, researchers studying ice cores drilled from the glaciers of Greenland began identifying a sharp chemical spike, a sudden surge of sulfuric acid deposits that could only have been produced by a massive volcanic eruption. The spike appeared in layers dated to approximately 1628 BCE. Dendrochronologists found the same signal encoded in the growth patterns of Irish oaks and bristlecone pines from California. Both showed a period of severe growth suppression, beginning around the same time, consistent with a volcanic winter caused by ash and sulfur dioxide blocking sunlight across the northern hemisphere. The Earth itself had recorded the event, across multiple continents, independently. This matters because a volcanic eruption the scale of Thera would not have killed only those closest to the blast. The immediate destruction included pyroclastic flows, tsunamis that some researchers estimate reached heights between 9 and 15 meters, and earthquakes. Those were only the beginning. What followed was atmospheric, global. Sulfur dioxide ejected into the stratosphere can reflect sunlight back into space, dramatically cooling surface temperatures for years. Harvests fail, rainfall patterns shift, famine spreads far beyond the reach of the original disaster. And here is where the story becomes something far larger than one island, one culture, one collapse. Researchers studying Egyptian records from the reign of Pharaoh Ahmose I, founder of the 18th dynasty, discovered an ancient papyrus now known as the Tempest Stele. Dated to approximately the 16th century before Common Era, the document describes catastrophic storms, darkness across the land, and destruction so severe that Ahmose ordered reconstruction efforts throughout Egypt. For generations, Egyptologists interpreted this text as describing a political or military crisis. But a team of scholars, including Robert Rittner and Nadine Moller, writing in the Journal of Near Eastern Studies in 2014, proposed a striking reinterpretation that the Tempest Stele may in fact be describing the atmospheric and climatic aftermath of the Thera eruption itself. Egypt, nearly 1,000 kilometers away, still feeling the consequences. If that interpretation is correct, then the eruption of Thera wasn't just a regional catastrophe. It was a climate event, a Bronze Age disruption so severe it may have simultaneously weakened multiple civilizations across the Eastern Mediterranean. Civilizations that were already interconnected through fragile trade networks, shared agricultural systems, and delicate political alliances. Pull one thread hard enough, and the entire fabric unravels. By the early 21st century, a new generation of researchers had begun assembling the full picture. Not just the eruption itself, not just the immediate destruction, but the long chain of consequences that rippled outward across decades, and possibly centuries, of human history. What they found was deeply humbling. The Minoan civilization did not vanish overnight. The evidence now suggests a slower, more agonizing decline. The palaces were damaged, then partially rebuilt, then damaged again. Trade collapsed, and then struggled to recover. Into that vulnerability stepped the Mycenaeans, a powerful Greek Bronze Age culture from the mainland. They appear in the archaeological record at Knossos, sometime around 1450 BCE, effectively absorbing what remained of Minoan culture into their own expanding world. A civilization that had pioneered art, architecture, seafaring trade, and early writing systems was quietly swallowed by history. But researchers like Sturt Manning of Cornell University have spent years arguing that we still don't fully understand the timeline. The precise date of the eruption remains one of the most debated questions in Bronze Age archaeology, with radiocarbon dating consistently supporting the earlier date of around 1628 BCE, while traditional archaeological stratigraphy pulls toward the later date of around 1500 BCE. Both methodologies are scientifically valid. Both cannot simultaneously be correct. And that unresolved tension means that some of the most fundamental conclusions historians have drawn about Bronze Age chronology across Egypt, Greece, and the Near East may need to be reconsidered entirely. That is not a small thing. Because chronology is the skeleton of history. Change the dates, and entire sequences of cause and effect shift. Civilizations that were thought to have influenced each other may have never overlapped. Events believed to be unrelated may suddenly align. The collapse of the Bronze Age, one of the most studied and still most mysterious periods of civilizational decline ever recorded, looks different depending on where exactly you place Thera in time. And yet, despite everything that remains uncertain, one conclusion has become difficult to dispute. A single geological event, lasting perhaps a matter of hours, at its most violent peak, fundamentally altered the trajectory of human civilization in the ancient Mediterranean world. It reshaped coastlines, it poisoned harvests, it sent climate shockwaves across continents. It may have contributed to the fall of one of the ancient world's most remarkable cultures, and left its fingerprints on the historical records of civilizations that never even knew the name of the island that had changed their world. There is something profound in that. We tend to think of history as a story driven by human decisions, by leaders, armies, ideas, and ambitions. And it is. But beneath all of that, the Earth has its own timeline, its own catastrophic interruptions. And occasionally, without warning, without mercy, and without any regard for the civilizations built upon its surface, it reminds us exactly who is in charge. The people of Akrotiri saw it coming and ran. The Minoans felt its consequences and slowly disappeared. And we, 4,000 years later, are still standing at the edge of a caldera, still asking questions, still piecing together a story that the ancient world never had the chance to finish telling. Some mysteries do not have clean endings. They have evidence. They have theories. They have centuries of careful excavation and the quiet, persistent work of people determined to understand. And sometimes, that is enough to make the silence of the past speak again. If this story made you see the ancient world differently, let us know in the comments. We read every single one. And if you want to keep uncovering the hidden histories that shaped our world, subscribing ensures you will not miss what we find next.